All right, the Avalanche lose the rematch to the Boston Bruins. Is this road trip and all this traveling kind of getting to them right now? Or are they waiting for this thing to end so they can just go back home? One more game to go on this road trip. And the Locked On NHL Network and their host ranked the Hart Trophy. Where do the Avs rank in that? We will discuss and more on this episode of Locked On Avalanche. Coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com, and follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Make sure you subscribe to our subtext as well. Link to that is in the show notes below. When you do, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one, become a special insider, and we get your opinion on everything Avs, which we share on this very show. And before we get started, because we did not have a show yesterday, the reason for that was because it was our very own Shaggy Von Doom's birthday. He was out celebrating with the family, so there was no game. So it was perfect time. The Avs did not schedule a game on your birthday. Was that a good or bad thing? I mean,
usually around my birthday, it's always like the Red Wings game. So it always falls around there. And being a birthday so close to Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I always get like that afternoon game.
Yeah,
but they were very kind and gave me the day off.
They gave you the day off. They didn't even have you as backup yesterday. Nope. They gave you the full day off. And was it a good birthday? Everything went swimmingly?
Yeah, I went and watched the hockey game.
You did it. You can't take the hockey out of them, folks.
Nope.
Can't do it.
Went and watched the AHL game. So
good for you. Good for you. Well, happy belated birthday, sir.
Thank you for all the wishes.
Yeah, there was a lot of them. Out there on social. So that was good. So, and then they follow it up and then they lose the day after your birthday to the Boston Bruins. And that I think everybody was expecting like that first game we got in Colorado, maybe like version 2 of that. And it really wasn't. I mean, it was entertaining, but the score is not indicative of the actual game. They got the empty netter, 5-2 in the end. Avs gave it all they could really in the second period. First and third were just really Boston in all of this. And I don't want to use all this travel. This is the longest road trip of the year as an excuse, but you play a back-to-back, you have one day off, and then you're in Boston because the travel is what it is, but you're not traveling that far. Like to go from Toronto to Montreal to Ottawa and then Boston is not really that far, so, but still it is travel. It is consecutive days away. It is travel. Is it getting to them? I don't know. The way that they played in this game specifically, there was life in the second period. So I'm like, okay, like this is more of what you'd like to see. And then you go into the third and you're like, that's where they've been excelling. And I think the third was more Boston. We'll get to like adjustments and stuff like that later, because that's what this game was. It was a game of adjustments, and Boston really clamped down on Colorado and didn't really let them do much of what they were doing in the second period. So I don't know. I want to put less on the travel and more on giving more credit to Boston. But just from an Avs point of view, I just thought they looked really kind of just. If you're looking on YouTube, I put pedestrian in the graphic because I just thought that's what they were. They weren't, with the exception of that wood line, there was really nothing exciting about them last night.
And I think the thing that's really going to sting thinking about this Bruins game, the Avalanche did it to themselves in that first period. Honestly, like it was a rough start, but the turnovers and the sloppy play in that first period, it's one of those. The more the game went, you could go back and without the empty net goal, it's 4-2 game, and they did allow a goal on a power play. The Avalanche could not capitalize on the 2 they had. And it's
Yep.
it's one of those that you're going back and you're second guessing everything. If they didn't give up the 3 in the first, and it was just slow down, like Cale Makar had some horrific turnovers. They
He
were
did.
just
He did.
abysmal, and it's one of those that the Avalanche talk about all the time. When they make mistakes, they're having to pay for it, and those were an example of that. That's textbook. And you can't do that kind of stuff against Boston, who is now sitting at the top of the league, and you can't do that on the road in Boston. And they did both of
Mm.
that. And it's one of those, if you just had a pedestrian first period where it was just a no mistake, just I don't care if you put anything in the net, but if you would have carried it over and had that resurgent second period, we'd be talking about a completely different game. But I think this is a lot of self-inflicted in the first period.
Huge.
And
Oh yeah.
and honestly, and like in Georgiev, I get the conversation around him right now, but you got to help him out here. And this is the complete opposite of helping out your goalie, who he's played 8 games in January, and 7 of those have been under 900 save percentage.
Mhm.
7 of those have been more than 3 goals given up. The exception being that
Yeah.
shutout in Vegas, but it's been some bad leaky numbers. So as a defense, you have to know this and understand this and clamp down just a little bit, but they're going the opposite way right now.
The one goal that they scored, that was just a redirect that there's nothing you can do about that
Yeah.
one, right? And that one actually was reviewed,
Mhm.
which I don't understand, right, as to how they upheld that, because it looked like he was offsides. They went and reviewed it, and they deemed that he was not offsides. And the explanation is that he had possession of the puck. How you have possession of that puck when you're tipping it to yourself? That's not possession of the puck. Like, you can be in front of the blue line. Like, if you're skating backwards and you're stick handling the puck backwards, you can go into the zone first.
Mhm.
Your skates can enter the zone first if you're handling that puck. They said he was handling that puck. How? He tips it to himself. First of all, when he tipped it to himself, he was offsides. And he's saying he has possession of that puck. It's not possession of the puck when you pass it to yourself. And they upheld it, and luckily the Avs killed that penalty. But that played a role. That played
Yeah.
a role, because now you're it's instead of 2-2, which it would have been, it's 3-2, and you're in a completely different situation. So I thought it was a horrible call. But even having said that, like, you just I didn't get any, even in the arena. It didn't seem
Yeah.
like there was a lot of light, which is odd for a Boston fan base. It just didn't seem like there was a lot of enthusiasm going around from the fans, from the Avalanche, from the Bruins themselves. It was all Avs in the second, and that arena was just it was like a cemetery in there.
And that's
So
been the story the whole road trip with all of these barns the Avs have visited. Montreal, Ottawa, everywhere they've been, it has been quiet. Just
Toronto was
very
raucous. Toronto was very loud, but the other ones, you're right. You're right.
it's been, and we'll find it out Saturday against Philly at what, 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. That's a early game, but
Mm.
it's we'll see what that environment's like. But I don't know if the Avalanche are feeding off that, and that has something to do with a lot of the pedestrian play. And it also doesn't help that Pasta like goes out there and gets a hat trick, and then once you get 2, they're force feeding him for that third, even
Oh
though it
yeah,
was an empty netter. And it's one of those that if that wasn't a factor, because they missed the net a couple times on that empty net attempt, it
they
would have been a
did. Yeah.
4-2 game. And then you could really start splitting hairs on if you didn't make that call and it get overturned, or if it
I mean,
stood.
yeah,
It's one of you could go back on that and debate it until the Philly game.
yeah. I mean, because it was 3-2
Mhm.
heading into the third, and you're playing it with that lead for the majority of it, and then they get that power play goal to make it 4-2, and then from the last few minutes of the game, they get the empty netter, and the score looks a little bit inflated. It is what it
And
is, but yeah.
taking late penalties also, that Josh Manson,
Ah,
like,
man.
yeah,
And I thought he played fantastic. I thought
up
he
and
looked
yep.
great. And then he just is fighting for position in front, stick gets up in a guy's face, and there's a penalty. Not what you need at that point.
Thankfully, it was not a double minor without blood, because I was
With a review.
anticipating that. Yeah, I was waiting on that to come down.
Waiting for that to happen. All right, let's talk. We'll get into some more of this game. And the thing that I noticed the most, and that was the adjustments that were made in this game by both teams. You saw kind of heavyweights going at it, and both teams at intermissions making adjustments, and it was kind of the difference in the game. So let's talk about that. We obviously have our sound check to get to, and these Locked On NHL Hart Rankings. I know we're all wondering where Nathan MacKinnon stands. We will get to those right after this. All right, first we are going to hear from Indeed, and we're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed, because Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and matching engines that help you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Excuse me. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visible at Indeed.com/lockedon. So just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Avalanche. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, then you need Indeed. We are also brought to you by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. The regular season is over for the NFL. We are deep into the NFL playoffs, but that doesn't mean you can't get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get a $150 bonus bet in their account, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Who are you liking this weekend, Mr. Sullivan? Anybody that sticks out to you? What about that big Bills Chiefs game? Where's that going to go?
Ooh, I you know what? I'm going to go Bills. I feel like it might be their time, and we're going to have a Bills and Lions.
I am not a conspiracy theorist. The NFL will make sure the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl to get that Taylor Swift storyline going. It will be huge for them.
You're not getting a complaint from me.
Mark it down. Maybe Sportsbook, FanDuel, that one somewhere. I don't know if they got it or not. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. That's FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right, more to get to with this game. Yeah, I mentioned I thought Josh Manson looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's maybe offset a little bit. I don't want to fault him too much for that penalty because he's just working hard. It wasn't just a foolish penalty. He's working hard. He's trying to get position on the front, not letting a guy just camp out in front of Georgiev and the stick goes up. He gets a penalty. Yeah, you mentioned on the defensive end, I thought he looked maybe the best out of the defenders. Makar had a good game, but there were moments where early on where he was. Everybody just seemed like they could not get the puck out of the zone again. And not only that, they were on the offensive end, on the Avalanche offensive, like when they would dump the puck in and go chase it, they were losing almost all of those battles.
Yeah.
And when you can't do that, you are not going to win because you come out, you want to dump it in, have like strong guys go in there, have those puck battles. And you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. But the ones that you win, can those will translate into scoring opportunities, and they just didn't happen. Like for the Avs, like they were getting beat on the boards all game long.
And Cale Makar, and like going back to his start, his passes, receiving and giving, were just off.
He just looked like he was off.
The first probably 7 to 9 minutes of that game, he was looking so bad that I was anticipating him just throwing up his hands and saying, "This is not my game," and just walking out of the arena.
Take me out.
Yeah, it's just one of those you don't have it that night. I mean, he was 2 points away from chasing down the record. He got 1. So he ended up cleaning it up. And to your point about Boston, something else that stood out to me is I hope Bednar was taking notes and wants to copy this, but how they set the Boston Bruins set up in the offensive zone, it's almost like they're on the eternal power play, and they have somebody sitting almost right at the top of the circles. So when they're
Mhm,
doing that pass around, it opens up the additional option for a redirect and dropping to somebody like sitting in Gretzky's office behind the net. I
mhm.
I found that just that mode of transition just flawless, and just kept thinking about what that would look like in the Avalanche system. And
Mm.
maybe this is something they could work on when they get back home. But seeing that additional wrinkle, I hope the Avalanche start playing around with their offense because, yes, it's working right now and it looks okay, but the power play is going back to ineffective. And I think that might be a little adjustment they need to play to find some
Well,
success again.
yeah, I mean, I want to like if you focus in on the second, like the second was great. The
Mm,
second period was great. They didn't have much to show for it, but that was they were moving things around. The all game long, the Miles Wood line looked
yeah,
great. So you're getting, that's another game in a row where your depth guys played well. They were not just pylons out there. So that's encouraging. And man, again, he makes a huge difference. So you saw that. You saw kind of those guys really like making an effort to match the effort that you're going to get from the top line anyway. I thought Mikko Rantanen had a really rough game.
yeah,
A really rough game. And hit like you're talking about Cale Makar's passing. Miko's passing was pretty bad. There were times where he was just passing the puck into whoever he's going to their skates. There were a couple that he whiffed on. There were a couple that just didn't have a lot of like oomph on him, and he's a phenomenal passer. So you have we're talking about two guys right here, Cale Makar and Mikko Rantanen, who so much of the Avalanche game runs through those two guys. And when they're off a little bit, it's not really going to matter because they're out there so much. They're going to have a shift or two where things don't go the way that they're supposed to go, and they're out there so much that they'll make up for it. I don't know. I especially with Miko. Nate was fine. He scored that one goal, hardworking goal. He was fine, but I did, and I thought Drouin was good, but I thought he tailed off as the game went
yeah.
on. But Miko, I just thought was fighting the ice all night long for some reason.
And I think the entire team was because just to kind of statistically uh, solidify the conversation around how upside down this game was, only two forwards had a point, Nathan McKinnon and Miles
Mm.
Wood, and that point was the goal. All the other points went to the defenseman.
Mhm.
Only three
Yeah.
defensemen did not have a point, and that would be McDermott, and that was Jack Johnson and Sam Girard. Those are the only three without points. Everybody
Mhm.
else tallied a point tonight, so you're getting your defenseman getting a lion's share of the points, and your forwards just walking away empty-handed. A lot of them not
Mhm.
even registering shots. So if and the defense playing defense looked weird in the beginning, and at the end they were really gassed. Like that second period, it was the best it looked all night, but it's
There
still not
was.
enough to win games.
And it's just odd that second period didn't carry over into the third. It's kind
Exactly,
of
yeah.
just what we've been used to for the Avs
Yep,
this year of them, they're the comeback kids of this year. Great second period. Okay, now we're going into our period. And it didn't happen. And I think all of that was adjustments made by both coaches. You saw, two coaches that are two of the top coaches in the league doing what they do. Right. The first was just a disaster for all
yep,
over the place. You give up the early goal, which I missed because I was just getting home from bringing my daughter home from gymnastics. So I'm like, I'm only going to miss like the first minute. Little did I know it was already going to be a goal on the board. But that whole period was just now you're fighting.
yep,
And then what the Avalanche do? They made the adjustments. They were the aggressors. And then in the third, back comes the Boston and just locks up everything in the neutral zone. Was not giving the Avalanche anything. And you can just go by shots on goal. Just for the Avalanche, 12 in the first, 16 in the second. 16-8 it was in the second. In the third, four
yeah,
shots on goal for the Avs. And when you're behind, And when you're behind and you're gonna, go for broke, and defenders are engaging, and you're offensive minded because you're down, and you can only manage 4 shots on goal. That's and you're an offensive team like the Avalanche are. That's not because you're just playing horribly. It's because they have a really good defensive plan against you. And I'm really impressed with Boston to be able to do that, to be able to hold an Avalanche team that has the offensive powerhouse that they are, to need to go for broke and only allow them 4 shots on goal is really, really impressive.
And I don't want to hear like in the comments, I can hear the keyboards just going right now. At least we split the series against. No, we did not. We took the last game was a shootout. They took Boston to a shootout. You outlasted the Bruins, but you did not beat the Bruins. The Bruins, they went toe to toe the entire way, and they kept Pasta in that first matchup to only 1 point, to where he had a hat trick in this last game. So it's we're talking measuring stick games. The Avalanche have to find an additional gear and honestly just clean up the mistakes. It's
Yeah.
one or the other, because this Avalanche team is good enough to beat the Bruins, but this is one of those that humble you and kind of make you realize you got to do a little bit more work.
And ended up with the Georgiev stuff. Like I was hoping to see a better performance from him, especially, having the complete night off. He didn't even have to go to the arena in Ottawa. So you had a couple nights just to get your head right. Come in against a good team against Boston. Again, I don't think he was horrible, but again, there's moments where you needed him to come up with a big stop. And amazingly, that's usually at the end of the game where you need the big stop. This was at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
The first shot they throw on net goes in. Not how you want to set the tone for a game for a goalie who's been hot and cold this year. And it was just, I don't know. I don't know where we're going with this.
I'm pleading the fifth on Georgiev because you have more confidence and optimism than I do. I definitely am not. I think I have fallen completely out of favor with Georgiev.
No, I'm not like completely out of it. I'm at the point where I've been saying it all year. Like he's got to play better, but I'm not like completely giving up and like, oh, let's make a deal for somebody else's starting goalie and to replace him. No, I'm not. Maybe in the off season, when we have a full season's worth to kind of go back on. But does he need to be better? Yeah, he does. He absolutely needs to be better. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if he's in that for Philly. Chris McFarland did say that they're playing him too much. He did come out. He was on a podcast. I'm not sure which one it was. Sorry, I can't give it credit, but he did say that they acknowledge that they talk about it every day, that they're playing him too much. So if that's the case, then you have one of two options. Just play who you have right now as your backup, or go make a deal. If you're not satisfied with your backup, go make a deal for one. But I think we're going to be seeing less of Georgiev to give him to try to give him as much as a break as possible, to set him up to be healthy and fresh for the playoff stretch.
No complaints here.
No, I mean, it was honestly nice to hear that they kind of admit that. So we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes from here. So, all right, let's get to these Hart rankings that the Locked On NHL Network hosts voted on, and of course, our sound check. And we will do those right after this. We're going to hear from Jace Medical, and I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but we got to talk a minute just about preparing for real life. And according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade, which is pretty scary. And we can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if our loved ones or some of our kids got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from the life-saving medications that they need. And thankfully, we can be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, and many others. And this stuff could happen to any of us. So visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular costs. It's never been more important to prepare than today. So go to jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com and use the offer code locked on to get $20 off of your order. Once again, that is jacemedical.com. All right, sir. So we're going to move on from that game and look ahead to Philly. But before we do that, well, we're not going to talk about the Philly game today. Before we move as a fan base move on into Philly mentally, we're going to get to some voting that the hosts of the Locked On NHL Network did, and this was for the Hart Trophy. Usually, I wonder if we're going to be doing these for the next couple weeks. Maybe Norris is coming next week. Maybe Vesna's coming after that. I don't know, but we did the Hart. And if you're watching over on YouTube, let's bring this bad boy up right there. There you go. There's your Hart. If you're not watching on YouTube, I'll read these down for you from 10 to 1. Number 10, Austin Matthews. Number 9, Sidney Crosby. Number 8, Artemi Panarin. Number 7, Cale Makar. Number 6, Connor Hellebuck. Number 5, Elias Pettersson. Number 4, Quinn Hughes. Number 3, Connor McDavid. Number 2, pause. I'm making people pause. That's Nikita Kucherov is number 2, which means Nathan McKinnon is number 1. So thank you to the host of the Locked On NHL Network for recognizing real is real. And Nathan McKinnon, number 1 right now for the Hart. I'm not going to argue that because that's exactly who I voted for number 1 in the Hart. And I think right now, I do think it's a two-headed race between McKinnon and Kucherov. I would expect both of those guys to continue what they're doing right through the end of the season. So we'll see how this all ends up. But man, like both those guys are on a tear. Of course, because we root for the Avalanche, I'm going to give McKinnon a little bit of a boost there.
Yeah, I like to see that Riley Tufte did not make it, so my vote did not go as
yeah.
But honestly, as the year goes on, I believe you're going to see that Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar vote start to get a little bit closer because Vancouver, where they're sitting right now, you're looking at how long Quinn Hughes is going to sit up there, and Cale Makar kind of swap places with Quinn Hughes.
If you're talking just Norris, which, like I said, maybe we'll do one of these. I still think right now Quinn Hughes is having a great season. I'm not trying to diminish what he's doing, but Cale Makar just continues to be Cale Makar, and I just don't think there's a better defender in the league. So Norris is a different animal. I put Nathan McKinnon 1. I put Kucherov 2. I put Connor Hellebuck at 3 right now.
I would too.
And I think if it were to end right now and you got your 3 nominees for the Hart, that's who I think would be your 3 nominees. I don't think Connor McDavid's in there right now. He's probably 4. He's not that far off. So I think Hughes is a little bit high on this list. I think Panarin is a little bit low on this list. I would put Panarin up maybe around definitely top 5. Definitely top 5. So maybe Connor McDavid 4 and then Panarin 5. I'm liking the Crosby thing. I think Crosby's having a very good year.
Yeah.
So number 9 for him, I'm not against that. The thing that I have a problem with is the guy that we just played, David Pastrnak. How he's not in the top 10. I'm questioning my coworkers over at Locked On NHL. How he's not in top 10 is baffling to me. Don't know.
I think it's probably just out of just sheer hatred, because there's no way you could justify it by stats. Like, he should be up there. You want to talk about that? Should be your 4, and you wanted to put Panarin at 5, put Jack Hughes at 5, And
Hughes is a good, yeah.
I'd put
But
him
I
at
think the thing
5.
with Hughes is the Devils team
Yeah.
themselves are
Just
struggling, so maybe that dings him a little bit. But the same thing can be
but
said for Tampa. But,
yep, true.
you know,
And
um,
I agree that you should be having him at least. I don't know who he would edge out right now, but it's a loaded top 10.
it's a
Don't get
thing.
me
Yeah,
wrong, but
right.
Pasta should be definitely up there.
He should be in there. He's the only one that I have a problem with that's not in the top 10. Um, so we'll see how this goes. It's going to be fun to watch because it's no longer just like three guys that you can always put in the top of the Hart conversation. If nothing else, this speaks to like all the talent that is in the league right now. And you can have those conversations now about, Artemi Panarin being at 8, and there's some people that would probably have him in the top 3 right now. So those are
Yep.
good problems to have for the league. You have a lot of talent in the league, and it's fun to watch.
You
So
could put Hellebuck up there at 1 if the conversation could be had, and you could put Crosby at 2.
absolutely. Absolutely. So fire away in the comments section. Let us know your rankings and what you liked and what you didn't like about that. Last thing we are going to get to, and that is our Locked On Avalanche sound check. Kyle and I pick one song that we feel best summarizes the most recent game. These songs go up on a playlist over on Spotify. Just look up LOA Soundcheck Volume 3. What do you have for the Avalanche and the Bruins, sir?
You lost all ambition. Why don't you give this thing a try? If you can't and you fall, you'll be the only loser. State of Massachusetts, Dropkick Murphys.
I figured you were going to go with the Murphys song being in, when you go to Canada, we do like Canadian bands. I think you did a Murphy song. Everybody wants to do
Yep.
shipping out of Boston or shipping up
You
to
think I'm
Boston. Sorry.
coming with a right, but I got a
And
left.
you came in with the Southpaw. Yeah. And you want to know something, man? I did not intentionally do this, but isn't Aerosmith from Massachusetts?
Well, we're about to find out.
Go look that up while I let you know that I went with, and I think I might have had this on volume 1. The name of the song is "Something's Got to Give."
Mm.
Um, and that's kind of more directed towards like the goalie situation, because it does. I talked about it when I was talking about like McFarland and what are you going to do? Are you look it up? Are they from?
Referred to as the Bad Boys from Boston.
I thought they were. No, not intentional. Look at that. Boston just pulls on you, and it just has you pick bands that I subconsciously I knew were from there.
I could have
Amazing.
picked Boston, the band.
You could have picked one. I mean, that's the one that's right in front of your face, and we didn't even see it. But yeah, I went that route because I do. I feel like something has to give with the goalie situation.
Yeah.
I am not giving up on Georgiev. I think he just needs more of a break. And what are you going to do about it? Are you going to fill that role behind him, or are you just going to stick with what you have and let those guys play more and deal with those consequences? Something's got to give here. Something. Where's it going to go?
Oh man, Georgiev, he's starting to get on my nerves, and it's like you've got to step it up just a little bit.
He does.
Like
Absolutely.
It also goes the same with the defense. Like you've got to clean it up, and guess what? If one of you clean it up, it makes the other defense job easier. I mean, it's the easiest thing to do, as I'm saying here, sitting in a chair, not playing the game, but it's what has to be done.
We'll see. We'll see if something happens sooner rather than later. When it happens, we will be talking about it. So until then, that's going to wrap it up for today and for this week. Enjoy the game over on the weekend against the Flyers to wrap up this road trip. But thank you for making this episode your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. We will be back on Monday to discuss things that happen on the weekend. Maybe there's a trade. Who knows? At the very least, the game against the Flyers. He's Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. Thanks again, everybody. And we'll see you Monday.